Welcome to our podcast, Disability Warriors, The Download, powered by Liner Legal, your disability warriors, fighting for dignity, justice, and the benefits that you deserve. Each episode, we bring you powerful stories, real legal insight, and everything you need to feel informed, supported, and never alone. Whether you're navigating the complex disability process yourself, supporting a loved one, or just want to understand the system a little better, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit follow now so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to take the next step, head to our website at linerlegal.com to schedule your free case review.
Because your voice matters.
Your fight matters.
And we're with you every step of the way. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. We are back with another exciting episode of Disability Warriors, The Download. This is an episode that I just have this natural excitement for because of who our guest is and the organization that he represents, which I am so excited to talk about with our listeners. It's an organization that is currently and definitely in the future becoming so important to the mission of what I do, helping people as a disability lawyer every day. Let me introduce you to Dallas Mudd. Dallas Mudd, he is the Senior Director of Partnerships for FindHelp.org. Dallas, tell us a little bit about FindHelp.org. Just give us like the elevator pitch, what you guys do, because it's just so awesome. And I'm so excited to expand the work that we're doing with FindHelp.
Sure. And let me start by saying thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm stupid passionate about what I do and why I do it. So for your listeners that don't know, FindHelp.org is a national database of community resources. We're in all 50 states, and we're all the way down from the zip code level all the way up to a national footprint of community resources that provide a direct service. A direct service meaning it's an organization that's there to help you in your community for a need that you have.
So how did FindHelp start? I mean, that's one of the things that I've been so curious about. Like, where does this come from?
So yeah, it was it came from our founder, Aaron Gray, and there's an entire story, and I would urge your listeners to go to that story and read that story of where FindHelp came from. It's most of us in this space, just like you, Michael. It's a lived experience that has created something that's amazing and beautiful, and it's why I'm here at FindHelp also. But in a nutshell, it's his family was going through some health problems, and he could not find the resources that he needed in the community. So he's a brainiac. He computer programmer, engineer. I'll get my hand slapped because I said something wrong, but it is what it is. But a brilliant, smart man that had passion for helping people. And here we are 15 years later, with FindHelp.org. And we're a B Corp company with this, we have this social agenda, and that is what FindHelp is. We're supported by our customers on one end, but that allows us to do this on the other end, making sure that there's always a platform out there for somebody to find something. And much like I just said a minute ago, the dignity part, I have real lived experience in my past that, watching my family struggle. I'm the oldest of 5. I'm single mom, watch her struggle, back in the 1980s, aged myself a little bit. There was no dignity, and there was no system. There was no safety net to really support somebody. And you knew about a resource by word of mouth. And if you didn't know, you didn't know. And so that's what I love about FindHelp. It's there. It's easy. There's so much dignity to it. And, you can work on the benefit of somebody else, or you can do it yourself. You don't have to ask those hard questions or answer those embarrassing questions. You can just go there and find resources for yourself if that's what you want to do.
And the national platform is just, it's such a blessing to me and my practice and the clients that we help. The hardest question that I would get in my first 10 years as a disability lawyer is, I would sit down with a new client. I would explain the process of getting disability benefits. It's an ongoing conversation with clients during the course of representation. But, what we have to tell them is that an average disability case takes 2 years, in some parts of the country, 3, 4 years, during a period of time when you're going without income, you're not working. That's why you're applying for these benefits in the first place, or you're underemployed. You're dealing with health crises, which then brings on financial crises. And the question that I could never answer is, how am I supposed to sustain myself? And, the answer that we would give people that I would give people, back then it was, me and a couple paralegals. It wasn't, the practice that we have now, is something along the lines of, I really hope you have a generous uncle, or you have some friends with couches that you can stay on. Because unfortunately, by the time I got to the finish line with so many of my clients, no joke, they were homeless. They were destitute. And it makes it harder for me to help them, because when you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, you don't know where you're going to sleep one night, getting to your doctor and telling them about your symptoms becomes like your 9th, 10th, 12th priority, right? Because you've got to focus on your basic needs first. And at the beginning we call it the Client Concierge Program. The vision was, that's not good enough for me. I'm not going to do what every other law firm in America is doing, which is just give that answer of, let's keep your fingers crossed that you get approved quick, or this moves, that somebody helps you skip the line. We started putting together this Client Concierge Program of building resources, which was doable locally, right? So my main office, many of my employees now we're, we've got employees spread throughout the country, but the core group that have been with me for a long time are all in Northeast Ohio. And it was easy to find resources locally. But then COVID happened, and we became a national presence with clients from Alaska to Florida, Maine to California. And how do we help somebody in Sacramento who's about to be homeless piece their life back together? And it was really hard doing it part and parcel until FindHelp entered the picture. And I just want to commend you, commend your organization. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I mean, you are changing lives and helping us change lives.
Yeah. Something you just said resonated with me, and it's kind of my mantra about FindHelp, and why I'm here. Prior to coming to FindHelp, I spent almost 10 years in the nonprofit world, executive with United Way in Arkansas. I built a 211 system in Arkansas during the heat of COVID. You want chaos, build a 211 system during COVID. But, what you just said resonates with me really deeply, because kind of my mantra, what I tell people is why I do what I do. And the reason is no matter how bad my day is, because I have bad days, it's normal. Everybody has a bad day. Somebody else's life is better because of what I'm doing. And I take that to heart, because of like what you just said, it's hard. Especially when you're working across the country and it's like, I don't know what's there, what kind of system it is. 15, 20 years ago, we could just send them to Pastor Dave at the Methodist Church, and there you go. Everything was taken care of. But that's not society any longer. Not saying Pastor Dave is irrelevant. What I'm saying is our problems are very complex, and societal problems are complex. So now the solutions are complex. It's how do we all work together and build that ecosystem? It's called the American safety net, and what it really is it takes us all working together and a lot tighter to make sure that individual in Sacramento it has hope. Because, one thing I learned, especially in the 211 world, is, when somebody would call 211, so 211's a free informational referral call center. And they would call 211 for what is in their face right now. But knowing that there was like 7 or 8 other things kind of driving that up, but with FindHelp, the benefit is you know what's going on in your life, and you can get on a platform, whether it's FindHelp.org or one of our customer or partner sites, and do that self navigation, and you get rid of that stigma of, whatever's going on in your life. I don't want to, trigger trauma for any of your listeners, but everybody knows what's going on in your life, and some things are embarrassing. I don't want to talk to somebody if I need chemical dependency. I don't want to mention that. I know I need it, so I need to be able to find it. So that's one of the things I love about the platform. And to give you an idea of the impact of findhelp.org, 81.5 million users have been on the platform. We've got 958,000 plus, program locations of, somewhere to go for help. And that just grows every day. We bring on partners, and, part of my job at FindHelp is, I focus on United Ways and 211s. That's where my expertise was before I got here. And now we have this faith-based initiative, which I love, have a lot of passion for that, is because, in about every community, that's your ground warriors. That's the people doing these ministry programs and doing this. And it's like, my CEO was like, "Hey, Dallas, go figure this out. Go do this." And so, obviously, I love being here. My CEO told me when I hired here, he's like, I know one thing about you. He was like, "I have to keep you really busy, because a bored Dallas is a bad Dallas." And he does a phenomenal job keeping me busy, but it's that passion, it's that love, it's, how do we build something better for you and your clients, and, the hospital networks and the VA. I'm a disabled veteran, so I can, it's a different instance of, disabilities. Dealing with the VA and a disability is the same frustration. So I spend a lot of time in the veteran community of,
So,
same thing we're talking about right now.
on a personal note, I knew that you came from the nonprofit background, but I wasn't directly aware that you came from United Way and 211, which plays a big role in my story, because my grandfather, who is 95 years old now and still sharp as a tack, was the executive vice president of the United Way of Southeastern Michigan, Detroit, which is one of the larger ones in the country. And even after he retired, he went on to United Way has a really strong retirees organization. He'd be going back and forth to Virginia for meetings and stuff there. But back when I started our Client Concierge Program, and I was explaining to him the problem that my clients have, my grandpa, who he's 90 years old at the time when he says this to me, he goes, "Michael, think bigger." And that's the same background is my grandfather saying to me, just giving me the courage to think, you can solve this problem that your clients are having. You can help them piece it together. I don't want to pretend like we have 100% success rate. There's, only so much money to go around. There's only so many resources to go around, but we definitely can unlock doors that clients can't do on their own. And it's really thrilling work. Let me ask you, Dallas. So, what are the most commonly requested resources that people are coming to FindHelp looking for assistance with?
Yeah, it's going to be the same three. It might be categorized a little different, but it's food insecurity, utility assistance, and rental assistance, housing. Whether it's unhoused, temporary housing, something about I need a roof over my head. So those are the top three, and that's pretty static throughout the country. That's the top biggest things that you need for your family to be comfortable. So it makes sense.
Has it been difficult for FindHelp to, build resources nationwide? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So, we have an in-house curation team. Curation meaning we scour the country for these resources. But we're also doing something a little different now. So one of my frustrations when I was running my 211, it was data curation. So, curating this data so that it's easily read, it's easy to understand, and it's all in one space. You can't trust Google, or, I'm gonna say Siri, but she's going to go off. But because for a nonprofit, a small nonprofit, updating a website, that's one of the last things I ever do because that costs money, and it pulls money from a direct program. So those real life curators that actually call somebody to verify that information, make sure it's accurate. It's an undertaking. It's a massive undertaking when you look at FindHelp because we're nationwide. So now understanding that and understanding that, hey, wait a minute, we're all curating their same resources. So it's FindHelp, it's the United Ways, it's the 211s, it's the Alzheimer's Association, it's, the Cancer Society. I mean, every organization is curating resources. And when we step back and look at it is like, how much money are we wasting curating these resources? So what we look at now is what we call a federated curation model. And it's where we bring in partners and be like, okay, we have to stop doing this. We have to start working together. And so that's one of the big focuses we have, is getting that system going. Plus on findhelp.org, we're not perfect. We're a man-made company by man. It was not, gifted by God. It was literally created by a very intelligent and passionate person. So we don't have them all, and we know that. So, you can go on findhelp.org and you can be looking at your community and be like, oh, wait a minute, I know there's a food pantry here because it's at my Boys and Girls Club or it's at my church or wherever it's at. So there's a suggest a program button on there. So you can click on that, and that sends a signal to our curators. We have a process just to make sure that's not a duplicate resource, because one thing I also know is, Grandma Flo's Food Pantry, what everybody knows it as Grandma Flo's Food Pantry isn't the real name. It's, whatever food pantry. So we have a system that makes sure it's not a duplicate resource. And if it's not, our curation team goes and checks it out. And if it's valid and accurate, we get it uploaded. And it's the same thing. We'll pick on Grandma Flo's. And I actually know Grandma Flo. So we're going to pick on her and I'll send her the link. But, maybe Grandma Flo's Food Pantry changed hours. Maybe they're not open on Friday anymore. But, on FindHelp, it says it's still open on Fridays. So there's a suggest button, or a suggest button that says, "Hey, Grandma Flo's isn't open on Fridays anymore." This shows, you're still showing that it is. So same process. It goes off to our curation team. They get a hold of Grandma Flo's and says, "All right, yep." So we make the update, and there you go. So you think of that as at a granular level. But then you expand that nationwide and you start seeing that impact on how that database grows and how we curate it and maintain it. So it's a huge undertaking, but it's the right thing to do.
So you've kind of covered how the information gets into FindHelp. I want to talk about how that information then gets used and who's using it. So, the people who are listening to us talk right now are probably it's going to be a mixture of people who are maybe inside of an organization that they could tap into FindHelp, other lawyers or law firms or medical professionals, whatever it might be. And individual users, the person themselves who is, facing food insecurity or trying to figure out how to get Medicaid started for them in whatever part of the country they're in. How do people tap into FindHelp? Who can access it? What services are available for them based on, what you need to get out of it?
Yeah. So it's available for everyone. There's no barrier. There's no, you have to register for an account, none of that. So findhelp.org, you go out there, and it's zip code based, and it's based on the hierarchy needs. So, you're going to put in your zip code and it's going to pop up and say, hey, we have 2,000 resources, available to you in your zip code. And again, that's still all the way down to the local nonprofit up to a federal program that covers your zip code. And it's everything from housing to, utility assistance, medical, And I would have to go look because I mean, I think there's like 8 or 9 different categories, and then they get broken down into subcategories, and that's what we call a taxonomy structure. We'll just take food. Food's pretty broad and pretty general, but it's like, okay, do I need a food pantry? Do I need a food delivery service? So we start breaking it down a little bit deeper, and then there's all kinds of filters to kind of just really narrow that down. If you get a very broad search term, or a search result, so then you can start narrowing it down and filtering it out. So that's FindHelp.org. That's there. It's perfect. It's amazing. And then you have the partnership in the channel partner side of, what we call our customers, our partners, the people that are paying us to make sure FindHelp.org, they're not paying us for that, but they're customers of FindHelp. In the way they're utilizing it, I can almost guarantee you somebody's went to the doctor and you're getting these really odd questions like, do you feel safe at home? Or, how many drinks have you had this week? Or, and I'm going through the VA questionnaire in the back of my head right now. Any thoughts of self-harm? So they're asking you all these weird questions. But what they're really doing is kind of doing an assessment behind the scenes of, okay, what is going on in Dallas's life? Does he feel safe at home? Does he feel like self-harm? Is there a drinking or a dependency problem? Does he have plenty of food? His utilities, what is all this looking like? And behind the scenes, they're doing this assessment. And then depending on how you answer these questions, especially on the FindHelp side, you get generated automatic responses. Be like, oh, well, Dallas said, he's food insecure. Or, oh, by the way, here's 6 food pantries that cover his area. So, so that's where you start getting into the really cool part of FindHelp for 2 reasons. One, it would continue to develop to make this easier, more dignified. And 2, I didn't have to tell my doctor, hey, Dr. Denton, I'm I don't have any food at home. That's a hard thing to bring up, but, just through a natural conversation, these things start getting identified and then we can lean into that. And then, we have the closed loop referral, which is the big thing. So it's all about information. 20 years ago, it was okay to say, hey, Dallas, here's a food pantry. Good luck. Now, society's saying that's not good enough anymore. We need to know what happened. Did Dallas actually get help from that food pantry? If not, why? What is going on with the situation? Did Dallas just not go? Or did Dallas, show up and, oh, we forgot to tell him he had a peanut allergy and now, we've got 6 bottles of Jif peanut butter and some, crackers for him, or peanut based, or did we, a navigator, recommend a food pantry for Dallas that's 10 miles away from his house and nobody asked if he had transportation? So you start getting into this and then you start being able to take care of an individually very holistically. One of the big things that I have seen is, diabetics. You have insulin, it has to be refrigerated. You have to make sure there's, a way to keep that insulin refrigerated. If, the power goes out for whatever reason, that person's in a world of problems. And then, by the way, we have to make sure they're eating healthy and, not Twinkies, so I mean, I'm going far out there and I love talking. So, but I'm
health is so holistic and there's so many. Every client and every consumer that you have, they bring us a puzzle and we have to slowly put these pieces together to make it the pretty picture that we all want at the end. And that's exactly what you're describing.
Yeah. It's an entire ecosystem. And I describe it as a cog and everybody's got a tooth on this cog of how we all work together. And that's really what FindHelp is building. It's that safety net that's really tight, really secure. And if you think of it, I'm a big fisherman, if you haven't noticed, if you think of a net, they got bigger holes in it. So it's how do we tighten those holes up just so that, there's always access. And that's what it's really about is access, access to resources. And at the end of the day, at FindHelp, it's not about us. We're a technology company. We're a software company. We do SaaS, business to business. We create these beautiful dynamics to really help support what you do. At the end of the day, for us, it's about making sure somebody is actually getting the help that they need or deserve or required to thrive. That's really some of the other beauty. That's why it's been 15 years and you're just now hearing about FindHelp, is because we've built this structure, not about us, about you.
Do you have like a favorite success story, a favorite story of a client that you've been able to help, or maybe even it's like an organization that you were able to really, there's just got to be wins every single day there.
There really is. And we have a chat channel where we celebrate these all the time. So one of my recent partners, City Serve X. So they're a faith-based organization, but they work in 4 lanes. So they work in the nonprofit lane, they work in the government lane, they work in the faith-based lane. And what's the other lane?
For profits.
Yeah, for profits. There you go. The businesses. And what they're doing is, they're really expanding this network. So their goal is to declutter this approach to getting somebody to care. So they partner with key individuals across the country, and the reason I say it, so I think their goal is 5 in the first year. They're I think 9. They want to be 100 by the end of next year. So, and I'm all about it. But the very first client they helped, I believe she got her car fixed. Utilities were caught up, food was stocked, and I think there was a medical need that they were addressed also. So Roger, if you're seeing this and I misstated that, my apologies. But if I'm remembering correctly, that was their very first client that they helped. And it is really beautiful because that's what we're here for. We're not here to get in the way. We're here to empower you to have outcomes like that. Even if it's a negative outcome, it's still an outcome that's providing you information. And that information is key. Just like I tell my, my nonprofit partners, not even specifically United Ways, what you're really doing with the information and the data is telling your story. Everybody can have a beautiful, tear-jerking story, but funders and donors now, you have to show metrics to everything. Okay, what are you doing? Where is your impact? I need to see real numbers, real value, real impact. And I also need to see what's going on that's not getting addressed. We call that an unmet need. Because, and that's very valid. I'm in my state, we have a state that's got like 20,000 more cows than people. There's not a lot of resources there. So we call it a data desert. So being able to identify those things to let legislators and funders know, be like, hey, we're seeing a problem in this community and nothing there to support it. So, that's all that back end information that, our partners, they really lean into because it really helps drive the next generation of innovation and ideas. And where should we invest? We meaning, a foundation or a state, where should we invest next?
I want to ask a little bit about how you respond to crisis or things that come up in the news. There's a big news piece that I've been seeing more and more, and it has to do with the future of SNAP benefits, especially in light of the government shutdown. And there's a fear that on November 1st, I think is the date, there's a lot of people nationwide who are going to be losing access to SNAP benefits, which it used to be called the food stamp program, but that's not a PC name, but food assistance. How does FindHelp respond to that? Because I imagine you're expecting, or you're already receiving a lot more calls than normal, even people who are scared and seeing those stories and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. What's the internal response?
Yeah. So 2 things with what you just said. One, obviously our curation team, we're well aware. We see things, and we also respond to natural disasters. So, we can, stand up resources immediately. So wildfires, tornadoes, earthquakes, those kinds of things. We'll put a banner on the site, be like, hey, for specific programs for this disaster, click here. So we have that. Food pantry, food assistance, it's very solid across the network. It's I'm not going to say it's the number one resource in FindHelp, but there is a lot of food pantries across the country that are listed in FindHelp. So just to pause real quick, you just said something when somebody's contacting us. So we don't provide a direct service in the community. We just provide a platform. So nobody's actually calling FindHelp. There's not a call center or anything like that. What we're doing is building the infrastructure for our partners in FindHelp.org. So that's one of the key differences of how we partner and engage with the community is, we're not providing that direct service. We're not, our access for the population is FindHelp.org or one of our partner sites. But to cap off your point, we have saw this coming. We have known this is coming. We make sure that those systems are listed and, we get them up and, if there's something new that we don't have, we make sure those get listed fairly quickly to, because of this, military service, both my boys are in the military. So I get it, and it's scary to be in that situation. Just like COVID, it was like, I talked to so many people during COVID, which, it was the first time ever in their life. I'm talking grown people that have ever had to ask for help. And it's very humbling. And it's very difficult when you're on this side of that phone call of, hearing that pain in somebody's voice of, I've never had to ask for help before, but I just don't know what to do. And, of course, that was on my 201 side. But yeah, so it's, we see it coming, we prep for it. And then we get resources listed as fast as we possibly can to really help the population.
I love that. First, once again, I just want to circle back and thank you for giving your time to me and your listeners and commend you for all the wonderful work that you're doing to help people get linked with the resources that they need nationwide. I do want to give you a chance to share a final thought or some, any words that you have for, the people who are consuming the information that you've got on FindHelp. What is one thing that you wish people knew that maybe they didn't know about how they can use FindHelp?
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And thank you again, Michael, for having me here. And I hope we can do this again because I really, obviously, I'm really passionate about what I do. The big takeaway is findhelp.org. It's there. It's free. We will make sure it's always there. It's, no barriers. We don't force you to sign up. We don't do anything that's malicious. It's like, here you go. Here's information. Use it how it will benefit you or somebody in your life. And then on the flip side to that, it's, our channel partners and opportunities that we have to partner. What does this look like when you're part of this ecosystem of really lifting up your clients, your customers, your patients, whatever that looks like? How do we bring all this together to really impact, your communities? Because it's that saying, it takes a village. I think it takes a village to raise a nut, I think is what it was. But when we're taking care of each other, it really takes that village. Like I said a minute ago, it's not 30, 40 years ago where one person can take care of all your needs. It's really a tight ecosystem. And I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I actually did a post this morning about the American safety net. And it just coincided with this. Ironically, Wednesdays are my LinkedIn days.
Okay.
It's so I keep reiterating, it's about all of us. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about the state of pick a state. It's about what we all do together. And let's stop trying to rebuild everything, just like all these data curation databases. It's like, okay, we got to work together because we're all wasting a lot of money, kind of trying to own something. It's not about owning something. It's about, taking care of someone.
Yeah. I love that. And there's just been so much great information, and I'm excited for the listeners and the people who check us out across multiple social media platforms where this will be spread can take away from this. So thank you once again, Dallas. This was an excellent episode of the Disability Warriors, the download. And I'm just so grateful for our partnership now and in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm here for you and any of your listeners or your clients. Reach out. FindHelp.org is there. And then, there's the company side to learn more.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Your story matters, and your voice deserves to be heard. Catch you next time on Disability Warriors, The Download, where we fight for dignity, justice, and the benefits that you deserve.